This is Action and Ambition, the show that takes you all over the world to share interviews with the most successful and relevant people on the planet. Hear their backstory, get the most important lessons they've learned on their road to success, and hear exclusive tips on how to implement their success in your own life. Action and Ambition is brought to you by Entrepreneur Magazine and your host, Andrew Metal.
Hey, and welcome back to the Action and Ambition podcast. We are here with Bita Milanian, and she is an Iranian who came here to the U.S. as a refugee. She is a seasoned traveler. She has a new passion project called BitaKitchen.com, and she has a focus on Persian food that is vegan and gluten-free. But there is so much background about Bita. She's involved in so many things involving social change and broadcasting, and we don't even know where to begin. So Bita, glad to be talking to you. Can you tell us about yourself?
Thank you so much for having me on. Yes, I kind of keep busy all day long because life's too short. Let's not forget, especially the past year and a half with the pandemic, we all realized that we really need to make the best of every day of our lives and just go for it and do whatever it is that makes us happy and also make the world all around us a better place because we each have a role in society to make that happen. So yeah, as you mentioned.
This is Action and Ambition, the show that takes you all over the world to share interviews with the most successful and relevant people on the planet. Hear their backstory, get the most important lessons they've learned on their road to success, and hear exclusive tips on how to implement their success in your own life. Action and Ambition is brought to you by Entrepreneur Magazine and your host, Andrew Metal.
Hey, and welcome back to the Action and Ambition podcast. We are here with Bita Milanian, and she is an Iranian who came here to the U.S. as a refugee. She is a seasoned traveler. She has a new passion project called BitaKitchen.com, and she has a focus on Persian food that is vegan and gluten-free. But there is so much background about Bita. She's involved in so many things involving social change and broadcasting, and we don't even know where to begin. So Bita, glad to be talking to you. Can you tell us about yourself?
Thank you so much for having me on. Yes, I kind of keep busy all day long because life's too short. Let's not forget, especially the past year and a half with the pandemic, we all realized that we really need to make the best of every day of our lives and just go for it and do whatever it is that makes us happy and also make the world all around us a better place because we each have a role in society to make that happen. So yeah, as you mentioned, I'm an Iranian American. I've been living in the US for the past 33 plus years. I'm an Angelino living in Los Angeles ever since I moved here, and I love it. I have so many family and friends and loved ones and have really a true community here. But I'm also, I consider myself like many others who are in the business world, a global citizen because we all have to contribute to the betterment of the world, and it can happen in our little towns wherever we are, or if we live in a much metropolitan city. So yeah, that's kind of my little personal background. And as far as my career, I've been in the telecommunications industry since 1996, the early days of telco, and I started working with startup companies, really grassroots, working hard 20-hour days, literally as a 22-year-old, and work my way up and really understand the technology, not having a tech background. I studied business administration and jumped right into the industry then. And I've been privileged to see the growth of the industry, the changes of the industry to where it is today. Truly, communication has become the most important technology. Communication technology has become the most important element in the world. We're here talking to each other remotely from different parts of the country. And we saw how important it is during the pandemic for it to really help keep everyone connected. So today I work for a global telecommunications company called Ribbon. We're providing basically backbone infrastructure to every single carrier that's out there in the world, as well as enterprises. And in my role, I am responsible for all digital marketing, communications, both corporate communications and external communications, media analyst relations, and everything that goes with marketing is part of my role. And I've been here for 7+ years. I love it. We have an amazing, amazing team, and I look forward to all the different projects and implementations ahead.
Well, fantastic. Well, there's so much to dive into there, and we would love to be able to tap in to some of your secrets, because obviously you have a lot figured out, and I'm sure there are some things to be learned from you as far as your focus and your energy and your passion. And I like what you said about something about having like a bigger purpose, and about having like wanting to cause some kind of global change, and not just clocking in and collecting a paycheck, actually like making a difference in the world. And you also mentioned something interesting about how the pandemic has knocked a lot of people, kind of reshuffle things, right? And I'm sure that it's caused many people to finally take the leap and finally quit that job, or finally start that business, or finally change careers, or do whatever to turn something unexpected and something bad into something positive, and to maybe wake us all up, and to get us all knocked off the hamster wheel and stop going through all the motions, and finally do something that's new and different. So just jumping in here, like, do you have a message for entrepreneurs out there, or do you think there is something that just is not being spoken about enough that you think that we need to hear?
Absolutely, you're hitting every single one of those elements on the head. I have at least 5 great examples of entrepreneurs who started their new businesses during the pandemic. 6 months into it, they couldn't pay their bills, or were just frustrated. They didn't like the way their new quote unquote work environment was like, and they just went for it. And I see them thriving over the past, they started 6 months into, and now they're thriving with their businesses. So lesson learned there is that there is always a silver lining in every horrible situation, every bad situation. And if we don't just take chances, if we don't jump into it, and this is something I try to tell myself every day with all the other projects that I do, or even within my existing role, sometimes you have to push the envelope. Sometimes you have to pitch that great idea that is a great idea to you, and others might think it's a crazy idea, but you never know how it's going to evolve from wherever it is that your mindset is at to become something great and amazing and impactful. So my 2 cents and advice on that would be not to be afraid to just go for it, because if you don't go for it, then you will always regret, and you will always wonder what if.
I like that message a lot. There's enough negativity in the world. There's enough people telling us that we can't do things. And I saw some quote the other day that was something like the biggest cause of failure is listening to friends and family, and listening to kind of the naysaying, and maybe not being crazy enough. And so with all your years of experience and all the things you've accomplished, have you ever come across a brick wall like that, Bita? Have you ever been in that situation where you doubted yourself and you needed to take a risk, and you had like a moment or a situation like that where you really had to do something new and different?
There are probably several occasions that has happened, and I've probably been in situations where nobody would really understand me or get me. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs and people that are innovators or really truly have groundbreaking ideas, they always were timid to share that idea, because they thought, oh my God, nobody's going to believe that this is something that can actually come to reality. Now, at the same time, I have to say, you have to be realistic with your expectations and what you think others might think of what you are about to do. So there's a fine balance there. Yes, you should push the envelope. You should just go for it and be crazy and cool and really break the ceiling. But at the same time, don't be overly expecting of everybody around you to really jump on the bandwagon and support you. At the same time, networking and really building that network. This is something I tell all young professionals entering the business world, is the importance of building your network from the beginning, and really nurturing the relationships that you develop early on, because you never know what those relationships might translate into 10, 12, 15 years from when you start your career. And you can always tap into them. When you come up with a crazy idea, you can always go to those individuals who helped you early on, or may have other resources to go to help that dream come to reality.
And I think about that a lot, about how I'll make some friend like 12, 15 years ago, and I'll just we won't have any business to do together, but then that'll be a nice connection, and then later on we'll just have a conversation and it'll work out. So it's like one of those things where even though it may not be clear in the short term, like, well, how can this person help me? How it's a good practice in general to be networking, and like
Yes.
how you're here appearing on podcasts and doing your media appearances and things like that. And so as far as that idea that you just mentioned about how like making a connection like years ago and then it pays off in the present day, is there a story or a situation that you can tell us about where that happened for you, where like you made this connection and just years later unexpectedly it paid off?
Yes, I'm sitting here today in the role that I am because of one of those relationships. So 20 years ago, I worked for a company called Global Crossing. And many people in the industry are familiar with them. Many people who were investors in the stocks are very familiar with Global Crossing. And I worked in that company for a couple of years. And the CEO of the company at the time, I was working very closely, always at the C level, including the CEO at the time. And years go by, we all kind of part ways, but I stayed in touch with almost many of my friends that, and including my CEO at the time, over the past 15 years ever since then. And I had actually shifted careers and gone into a nonprofit. I was the executive director of a nonprofit here in Los Angeles, taking a break from the telco world and giving back to my community. And sure enough, 15 years later, he became the CEO of the company where I am today here, and tapped on my shoulder. And here I'm back for past 7 years in this role. And it was the best thing that could have happened for me at the time for my career. It was the change I needed, the challenge I needed. And it's the best example I can give you. And it all happened because I stayed in touch with this person. He saw my progress over the years and my growth and developing my talents and skill sets and what have you, and saw that I could be a fit for this role and recruited me back into this position.
Well, fantastic. Well, that really paid off. And so as far as you keeping in touch with people, is this something that does it come naturally to you? Do you have to carve out time every week to do it? Are you a LinkedIn, a texter, a phone, all the above? How do you keep in touch with people, and what's the schedule like?
It's all of the above, and it really has to be part of who you are as a person, and it's a skill set that you need to. If it's not it's your thing, you need to develop it and really nourish it. Some people are more discipline, need more discipline in doing that. Some people it just comes naturally to them. I think in my scenario, ever since I was a kid, I was a networker, and I like really nurturing my surrounding and helping people, and just being in touch with friends and loved ones and colleagues later in life. But if it means for you to spend an hour or allocate an hour or two every week to reach out to your LinkedIn contacts or send text messages or just make calls. Sometimes, making calls, I reach out to some of my contacts, business contacts or friends that I haven't talked to in a year or two, that I know if I just pick up the phone and have that conversation with them, first of all, it's the most soothing, relaxing half an hour I've spent from my busy, crazy world, because I know I'm talking to somebody who gets me, who's known me for many years. Something we all miss these days, especially with our social media connections. We have this virtual friendships, but really picking up the phone and having that one-on-one conversation is really mentally actually very soothing and very helpful for you to have that conversation. And I always, with these conversations, would come up with new ideas or something they're doing that I wasn't aware of, and vice versa, and we help each other. So really, it needs to come naturally, and if it's not your thing, just work on it. I promise you it will pay off.
I like that a lot, and I can relate to that. You make me think about like back in high school, I had like this circle of friends, because you remember high school, there's a lot of jerks out there. And then years later, when there were things like the high school reunions and they'd organize them on Facebook, and I would look through the list of names and I think, I've never met any of these people. Am I sure I went to the right high school? And then even in like early adulthood, you're making me think of times when it was just so easy to just hide behind the computer screen and just, make the websites and build the lists and do things like that. But then maybe later on in life, maybe like when I matured, I noticed that I don't know if working on people is the right idea of the right term, but I would kind of just like check in every few months, or even if I had a thought or idea about some person or thought back to some conversation, I would treat that as a sign to just send a quick message. And kind of like the way you put it, like sometimes it can be quick and easy. It doesn't have to eat up a lot of your day. And sometimes it can be a break from your day. It seems like you're saying, if you're just going through all this answering emails and dealing with like customers and things like that, your break can be making the phone call and reaching out to this person. And I'm sure that you've come across this, Bita, but sometimes just explaining your problem to someone who has no investment in it and getting a fresh perspective, or just letting go of your own problem and hearing about their problems sometimes solves your problem for you without you even trying. Has that happened to you anytime?
Absolutely. It's the best therapy you could get to yourself is talking to somebody you trust who has an unbiased opinion about what it is that you're going through and giving it to you straight up. And at the same time, just hearing you out. Sometimes we just want people to listen to us. And that's why we see a lot of people expressing themselves so passionately, positively or negatively on social media, because as humans, we just want to express ourselves. We want to share our feelings. And sometimes not because we're all in this bubble of technology and sitting behind our devices or computers, we forget the opportunity to actually picking up the phone or having coffee with somebody face to face, how much more impact and how much more positive outcome it can have for you as a result. So I highly recommend it. As I mentioned, I do it often. I pick up the phone, I call people that I really trust who've known me for years, and just let it out. And sometimes I come to realization of certain things that I have built in my head, or this idea that I might have had that may not be the directions I should be going towards. And with that conversation, I have made the change that is to my benefit.
And you're making me think like of conversations on my own too, of like sometimes like saying like, should I do A or B, or just someone giving me even a new question that I hadn't even thought of. And again, like I used to think that like meeting for an hour for coffee and like wasting an hour, like used to be a waste of time, because I think, well, could the things that we communicated, couldn't we have just sent an email or a text? Mm-hmm. But from the way that you're explaining this, sometimes just the slowing down, the relaxing, just kind of helps you to recharge your batteries, or just kind of solve the problem that you spent 8 hours just really hammering on and couldn't make progress. But then when you turned your brain off, then you fixed it in 10 minutes. And so with all of your projects, with all the things you have going on, do you ever feel like you're like spread too thin, or do you ever have any like time management, like problems or secrets to share with us?
When I was younger, I really would push the envelope with doing way too many things and really doing it, really stressing myself out both physically and mentally. And that's how I had my little breakdown, and which is why I started this whole new passion project called bitakitchen.com. And it was really for me to take a moment back and find the balance to take care of myself, both physically and mentally. I had a lot of health issues, and it was all a result of working too hard, stretching myself too thin, and then at the same time was traveling extensively. So a lot of that stuff made me realize when I had my health issues that I had to fix, because those things, if your health is not there, if you're not really well, both physically and mentally, you can you're not productive, and you're no good for anybody, especially for yourself. So self-care is so important, and that's why it's important to find that balance, whatever that is for you, early on, or when the alarms start going off, listening to them and really taking a moment, stepping back and finding your true balance of what it is that makes you happy and at the same time keeps you sane and healthy. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that's kind of I had my aha moment when I had that kind of a crash of my health situation, and I just had to really reset all my buttons and make sure I say no certain time, because I would never say no to people when they ask for help, and I have to relearn that skill to say no when it is that something that I can't really commit to or give my all to. So.
Well, that is good advice, and those are good reminders. And sometimes there are things that maybe appear fundamental on the surface, but if they're so easy, if they're so simple, why don't we follow this advice? Or why is it so easy to forget this advice? Or even sometimes, even with myself, like I'll hear like this simple advice that you give, and I'll say, oh yeah, sure, take a break or listen to your body when things aren't working out. But then it's easy to ignore the advice, and sometimes we just need to hear it again and again from different people, different perspectives, to finally actually listen to that advice, especially as we get older in the years. Because as you said, when you were in your 20s, sure, knocking out 20-hour days was okay, but for how many years is that sustainable? And can that really be sustained into, middle age, old age? Probably not. We run out of steam eventually. And so these are good reminders, and these are good things for you to be sharing with us. And so we mentioned a few times that you have like this new passion project, bitakitchen.com. So can you tell us about what that project is all about and what makes it unique, what makes it stand out?
Well, as I mentioned, I started realizing that I'm not eating healthy, I'm not exercising, I'm not doing any of that, which caused my body to go into a shutdown mode and have all these different issues. So I started, for my mental and physical therapy, I started cooking. And this is before Instagram really got big. So I used to post my videos, simple, quick, healthy meals that I make, and post them on Facebook, and they started becoming more and more popular. And my whole concept was, how can we, with all of our busy schedules, how can we make healthy, quick, rustic meals that we can make under 30 minutes that are still delicious and nutritious and presentable, like all of the above? How do we do that? And I had always had a passion for cooking and entertaining. I just never, thought about sharing it. So that kind of started having a following, and more and more people started resonating with my message, because as we mentioned, a lot of us are working hard, we're neglecting our health, and really are too lazy to cook at home, which is the most important thing you can do if you want to really be healthy. It starts in your own kitchen and your own refrigerator and your pantry. So I started sharing more and more of that, and how I'm doing it with my busy schedule and traveling all the time. And then when I was home, I would make sure I never eat out. I make food at home and invite family over. This is before the pandemic, which we could do more often. And that's how one day, 3 years ago, exactly August 31st, 2018, I, having the marketing mindset in my head, I thought maybe a lot of people don't want to hear about my cooking on my personal profile, Bita Milanian. Let's just give it a brand. And that's how I started Bita's Kitchen. And the website is with bitakitchen.com on all platforms. And slowly, I also started becoming gluten-free and more dairy-free and vegan. And I've always been a fan of vegetarian food. So I'm recreating some of the classic Persian recipes, which is my what I grew up with, as well as a lot of Mediterranean recipes, and making them gluten-free and vegan, yet beautiful and presentable. At the same time, I don't want to call myself a chef, even though we have amazing chefs who became chefs as a result of being amazing home cooks. So there's no shame in that, but I just don't want to be called a chef. But I do respect a lot of chefs. I've always had a lot of chef friends. So I also started the Chef Guest series, where I bring on chefs with their, from their perspectives, and they share their recipes. And we really, especially over the pandemic, it really grew even bigger. And there were more home cooks, as we all know, who started sharing their recipes. So it's all about highlighting all those people who are bringing the communities together through food, which is something we all need every day. And while giving back, I've also done charity work as a result of Bita's Kitchen. I've cooked for the guest chef series that they had at Momed, a restaurant here that collaborated with the LA Times annual food program that they have. And I cooked Persian food at a non-Persian restaurant, and the proceeds went to an immigrant organization that supports immigrant causes. So, just using the passion that I have for cooking, and really branching it out and bringing the community together while sharing my experience with the world has been really rewarding for me personally.
Amazing. Well, I'm hearing a lot of you like using your energy and just putting everything into all these different projects that you have. And I'm hearing that you enjoy reaching out to people and seeing how people can collaborate and how people can benefit from what you do and how they can contribute ideas. So this is all good for us to tap into this mindset and be thinking some of these things through as you have. And so as we're kind of approaching the last few minutes of our conversation here, do you think there's anything that we're leaving out? Because there's you talking about your background on the questions that I have, but do you think that there is like a really important message in here for entrepreneurs that I'm not asking you that we need to hear about? Anything come to mind?
Never stop learning, never stop really developing your skill sets, never stop asking questions, never think that you know it all and you've stopped learning. I I'm turning 48 in a couple of days, and I know that I have another 20, 30 years to go to continue learning, really growing, and, challenging myself. So I think sometimes, we think that we've received, this is it, I know it all, or I don't want to do more. And that's when we stop living. And to stop living and to stop growing is not a good place to be. And we might think, I've made it, somebody makes the, starts a company and they sell it for millions of dollars and they're living life and they are not really giving back or doing something with the platform that they have created for themselves. It disappoints me sometimes seeing amazing humans who have made it big and have an amazing platform, not really doing more to give back. So my advice or my to myself is to never stop learning, always continue growing, always reach out to people who are in need and see what your accomplishments can do for them so that they can continue. So we have to keep this cycle going so that we can continue building a society for the next generation to come, so that they can really take on what we have built and grow on that and make the world a better place. And that's how the life, that we are living will continue going. And that's that. Those would be my final words here, probably.
Well, I think that's a powerful message, to be continually learning, so that way you don't fall into the arrogance and this thinking that you know everything and always having to be right. And always and continue to give. That way, you're not just being a selfish person. You're in Southern California. I'm in Northern California. And this idea that I can't shake is that so many years ago, people thought California was an island just because they'd only mapped a certain part of it. And they just assumed, and they were stuck in their ways. And so whenever I think that I know too much, I tell myself, some people used to think that California was an island, and that's a scary, dangerous place to be, to be living in ignorance. And so what's next for you? Like, moving forward in the future, do you have any exciting new projects or opportunities on the horizon?
Well, we're very busy at Ribbon, the company I work for, and we've got a lot of projects coming. So I'm excited to working on those and really helping the company continue doing all the incredible things that we're doing. On a personal front, I want to, I'm more and more committed in developing this cooking concept that I have started and see where that goes. So if anybody's interested in a approach that I have in a healthy way of life through food and entertainment, because I also like to make it fun, follow my journey. And I love learning from everybody else from their experiences. And those are probably my two major things that I'm focused on right now.
Well, fantastic. Bita Milanian, the SVP of Global Marketing for Ribbon, rbbn.com. And then to investigate that very exciting and interesting food project and venture, that is bitakitchen.com. And is there any final message or any other URL or link you feel like dropping here before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I also have a podcast where, similar to you, I highlight immigrants who are being change makers. So that podcast may be found on my Instagram handles at Bita Milanian. It's on my IGTV, but you can also find them on YouTube. It's all about people who are making a difference in the world, being change makers and giving back to their communities. So please check them out. They're amazing humans out there, and we need to highlight more and more humans like them so we can be inspired by them.
I agree completely. And you're listening to a podcast right now, so why not listen to more podcasting? That's Instagram, Bita Milanian. Go there, find out about those amazing stories, get inspired, get the information that you need to know. And thank you, Bita, for stopping by the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you again so much for having me on.
Thanks for listening to Action and Ambition with your host, Andrew Metal. Please leave a review and subscribe, and go to andrewmetal.com for all the exclusive lessons, behind-the-scenes footage, and video content of the show. Follow us on Facebook and YouTube at Action and Ambition, and we'll see you on the next episode.